My name is Nabeel, and I'm 22 years old. I'm a college dropout, and I actually dropped out 3 years ago at the age of 19 to focus full time on entrepreneurship. And in the past 3 years, I've founded 5 companies, and I run a marketing and a PR firm, and we work with many top entrepreneurs and companies from all over the world, and we help them with their marketing and PR strategies. We've done hundreds and thousands of dollars in revenue, and next year we'll be at 7 figures. Apart from that, I've also been interviewed and featured on many global media outlets, and I'm also a columnist on Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, and more than 30 other world-renowned publications. So when I was asked to give this TEDx talk, the first challenge that I faced was trying to figure out what idea I wanted to talk about. I was told that I had to talk about something that was that I was really passionate about, something that was really central to the work that I was doing, or was really central to my life. So I had to do some soul searching. I had to figure out what that central theme was. So I might not be the most experienced speaker here in terms of age or breadth of experience and everything. But if I was to consider my career as an entrepreneur, however many years I've had, and if I was to consider the success that I've achieved, and if I was to break down that success into one core word or one core theme that basically defines the entire success, or the success would not have been possible without that core theme, that core theme would be self-education. So in this talk, I'd like to basically explain what self-education is, break it down and explain it from the fundamentals. And I'd like to show you how it works and how you can harness the power of self-education to completely transform your life. Let's start off at the very beginning, when we are like infants. So we probably don't remember much from this age, but we probably learned the most about the world during it. You see, infants are way better learners than us. It was recently found in a study by 3 scientists for PubMed Central. They found out that infants are extremely curious about the world around them, and this curiosity is what drives them. And this curiosity is what drives them to explore the world and learn more and more about it. But what happens after that? We enroll in the first stage of formal education, and very quickly, we forget the fantastic learning strategies that we once employed as infants, and we get tied up in the formal education and all of that, and we forget the learning strategies that we used before. Now, instead of using exploration to drive our cognitive development, we start to become dependent, totally dependent on just teachers and books to come and develop our cognitive growth. As you can see from the slide, formal education is the kind of education that is built around a structure. This kind of structure is necessary by the system in order to ensure some kind of uniformity between the different levels of growth and the different grade levels. But with any rigid structure comes restriction. And if we were to consider formal education itself, the structure itself has a lot of restrictions. And while formal education is great for different kinds of learning, it's great for academic learning, but that's all it's good for. And if you were to consider formal education itself, if you were to consider the formal education system, the creative learning itself is exempt from it. In formal education, we're taught to play within the lines. We're taught to think as everyone else is thinking. It's discouraged to break the rules. We're taught to just fit within the lines and do what everyone else is doing. But if we were to analyze history itself, the biggest success stories in the world were those people who did not just play within the lines. They were not those people who just did what everyone else was doing. The biggest success stories in the world were those people who broke the lines, who carved their own paths to success, who did not let any structure or any formal institution restrict their learning. Instead, they carved their own paths to success. They used their curiosity and their passion to drive them, and they were able to achieve the success that they wanted. Now, coming to the next definition, self-education. If the operative word for the last definition is structure, the operative word here is rhythm. What a huge contrast. An autodidact or a self-learner is anyone who chooses what they study, how they study, and when they study. Unlike with formal education, in self-education, there are absolutely no bounds. You can choose whatever you want to study, whatever interests you, you can choose whatever you want to study, and you can study it to whatever level of knowledge that you wish to seek. There are no restrictions. Here's a quote by Mark Twain, one of the most famous authors who has ever lived. He said, "I have never let my schooling interfere with my education." Here's another quote by Jim Rohn, where he says, "Formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune." So the fact of the matter is that as technology is advancing and as access to information is becoming easier and easier, we have lesser and lesser reason to rely completely on just formal education alone. We're taught to believe that a good degree will get us a good job, and that is the formula for a happy, successful, fulfilled life. However, statistics don't mirror our optimism. If you take a look at this graph, this is a graph for graduate unemployment in Pakistan. This is the Pakistan Unemployment Trends 2018 survey conducted by the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, and it shows an alarming rate of unemployment in Pakistani graduates. And as you can see, in 2007, 4.6% of male graduates were unemployed, but that figure has risen up to 7.3% in 2018. If you were to consider the female graduate unemployment rate, it was 9.7% in 2008, and then it has risen up to 41% in 2018. So it has almost quadrupled. That is a huge figure. It is very clear that unemployment rate for graduates is on the rise, and it has continued to rise for the past 10 years, and obviously the trajectory is upwards. So this causes us to think, can we really rely fully on the formal education system? Like absolutely fully on it? In order to understand the situation a bit better, we need to backtrack a bit. We need to go back to the fundamentals. We need to understand the basic principles of learning itself. If you take a look at this is the way schools teach us. This is the way we're taught to learn in schools. The teachers or the prescribed reading material, they give us the solution first. They tell us to memorize the solution. And then, once we memorize the solution, then we're tested on it. We're given a series of problems and tests or quizzes, and we are tested on the solution. And then we apply the pre-learned solutions onto the problem, and then we solve it. If we solve it well, we get an A. If not, then we get an F. Now, this is the way that we should approach problem solving in real life. We should not start off with the solution. We need to start off with the problem itself. When we start off with the problem, that is when discoveries are made. That is when scientific or overall progress in the world, human advancement is made. So we need to start off with the problem. We need to start off with the problem. We are faced with some kind of challenge, some kind of hurdle that we need to solve. We start with the problem, and then we need to do some research. We need to gather relevant information related to that problem that will help us solve it. So once we have gathered all the information related to that problem, then we attempt to solve the problem itself. If this solution works, wonderful. If not, then we try again. This is where trying comes in. Self-education actually has two parts. We have self-learning and we have self-trying. No amount of research and reading is going to help you master any skill if there's no trying involved. For example, if I give you an example of learning to play an instrument, like a piano, for example, you can read and research about piano all you want. You can watch as many documentaries as you want about Beethoven or any other composer. But that won't allow you to master or actually learn how to play the piano. Until you actually start to play it, until you actually practically get involved in it, you won't learn how to do it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you 3 examples of people from very different backgrounds and these are 3 people who harnessed the power of self-education, and self-education was something really central to their lives. And these are 3 pioneers, by the way, 3 pioneers from 3 different industries, and self-education was central to their whole experience, and they used the power of self-education to transform their life, and they not only changed their own life, but they changed the course of history itself. Starting off with the first example. Two brothers, one of them was born in 1867, and the other was born in 1871. Two brothers, and during their childhood, they used to move around a lot. They used to move around a lot, and they did not have, because their family was always traveling, they used to move around a lot, and because of that, they were not able to attend school regularly. Their father often, and because they were not able to attend school regularly, both of them never actually finished high school. These two brothers, their father allowed them to take half days from school, which allowed them to pursue their intellectual interests. They used to plan a lot of projects together. They used to do a lot of projects together, both the brothers together. They used to build kites. They used to build newspaper folding machines. They used to build a toy rubber helicopter. They even tried to use a toy rubber helicopter to lift a human being up, unsuccessfully. They were not able to do that, but they tried to do that. After that, these two brothers, basically, they started and sold many successful businesses, and including a newspaper printing press. And the money that they gathered from these, by the selling of these businesses, the money that they gathered from here, they used that to fund their true passion, and that passion was aviation. They used that to fund their projects, and eventually, these two brothers launched, they constructed, designed, and patented, and actually flew the first ever man-made aircraft. I'm talking about the two brothers that we now famously know as the Wright brothers, Wilbur and Orville Wright. You see, these two brothers, they pursued their passion, they pursued their curiosity. They did not let any formal system or some structure restrict their learning. Instead, they focused on their passion. They wanted to do something, and they just worked on it. They did not wait for some teacher to show up, or they did not wait for some instruction manual to be handed to them. They just went out and did what they wanted. They wanted to pursue their passion, and they did it. And in doing so, they became the pioneers of the aviation industry. Today, we can fly from one corner of the world to the other in a matter of hours. That is only possible because of these two brothers. They not only changed the course of history of aviation, they changed the trade industry, the travel industry, and the warcraft industry. Second example, which I'm going to read without the slides. Second example is, this guy was born in 1452 in Tuscany, Italy. He received an informal education in Latin, geometry, and mathematics, virtually no formal education. He used to sit around a lot, and he used to sketch a lot of diagrams and stuff, and related to like human flight mechanisms and like armored vehicles and solar-powered vehicles, a lot of different stuff related to a lot of different things, like underwater apparatuses. He used to be involved in a lot of engineering pursuits. Most of his designs were not constructed during his life because of the limitations of metallurgical and engineering processes during his time. Because at that time, this was the 1500s, the engineering and metallurgical processes were in their infancy. Some of his designs were constructed and are now part of the manufacturing industry, such as a device that can test the tensile strength of wires. And after that, he became famous as a visionary painter. 15 of his paintings now survive, the most famous of which is the Mona Lisa. I'm, of course, talking about the Italian polymath, Leonardo da Vinci. The third example is that of a man born in 1955 in Seattle. And he was born to a father who was a lawyer and a mother who was on the board of directors of the United Ways of America. As a child, he often got bullied, and he often got bullied, and he used to keep to himself. And when he used to be in his room, when he was like working and stuff, his mother used to ask him what he was doing, and he used to shout back like, "I'm thinking." So he used to think a lot. When he was in school, in middle school, high school, he used to play around with the school's computers a lot. Like, he used to pursue coding on it. He built his first computer program on one of his school's computers, which was an implementation of a tic-tac-toe game. Later on, he often also used to skip classes to pursue coding. At the age of 17, he started his first venture, Trafo Data, which made traffic counters on the Intel 8008 processor. Later on, he graduated from high school, from Lakeside High School, and he graduated from there as a National Merit Scholar, and then he went to Harvard. Later on, at Harvard, he would drop out to start a software company. I'm of course talking about the man who revolutionized the personal computing industry forever, Bill Gates. He, along with Steve Jobs, are the two pioneers of the personal computing industry in the late 20th century or the late 1900, after 1950. So Bill Gates, everyone knows him. He used to be one of the richest people in the world, but like, he's a pioneer of the personal computing industry. So these three people, if we were to consider their lives, I mean, I personally, I'm the kind of person who, I mean, if I want to achieve something, I look at the people who have already achieved that thing. And then I follow their example. I try to understand their life. I try to learn from them. So these three people, what do these three people have in common? Obviously, they're successful. They've changed the course of history itself. They've changed the world. They're revolutionaries. So what do these three people have in common? These three people were driven by their curiosity and their drive to create stuff, to invent. They did not let any formal structure, institution restrict their learning. Instead, they carved their own paths, and they did not let anyone else stop them. They continued the pursuit of knowledge, and because of that, they changed the course of history. I hope these examples have shown you that self-education can be done in a number of ways. That's the beauty of it. Your life and your story is in your hands. You have the luxury to pursue whatever topic that interests you and to attain whatever level of knowledge that you wish to seek. Through experimentation, through trying, to the pursuit of knowledge, you can do whatever you want. You can try things out, you can test things out. There's no one there to stop you. And it's not just these people. There are hundreds and thousands of other people all over the world. As you can see from the slide, there's Edgar Allan Poe, there's Albert Einstein, Steve Jobs, a lot of scientists, Steve Jobs, and Michael Faraday, Mark Twain, Henry Miller. I think Bob Dylan is in there as well. So a lot of people who changed the course of history itself are in there. And all of these people, they had the one thing that they had in common was the curiosity and the drive to learn. So, if I was to leave you here with a question today, that question would be, what about you? How are you going to harness the power of self-education? How are you going to harness the power of self-education to transform your life? Thank you.